You know what Pokemon game I love? Pokemon Rumble. It's a game where you play as a Pokemon toy and you fight other Pokemon toys in order to try to recruit them. And there's also these Pokemon Rumbles, that's what the game is named after, where you battle a bunch of other Pokemon in hopes of winning. And the interesting thing about the combat is that you only get access to 2 moves. Now in Pokemon battles, of course, a Pokemon's moveset is everything, and some Pokemon may even want more than 4 moves on its moveset. However, in today's video, I am using a full team of Pokemon with only half of their moveset, just 2 moves. This was definitely really challenging, but it also made for some really interesting battles in the end. So if you have an idea for a Pokemon team, be sure to comment one down below, and I will use it. And with that being said, let's get right into these battles. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, lovely people. Today I am using a Pokemon team with only half of their moveset. Now, if you think that this team was optimized in any way, you're half right. I mean, I'm using Kingambit on this team, of course. So, this was definitely a really interesting and fun team to use, but wow, was it pretty challenging. But if you enjoy this kind of content where I use these really interesting teams, then please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. And now, without further ado, let's get right into this first game. So, I noticed that my opponent has a Sun team, so of course, that is going to mean that they are going to lead off with their Torkoal and set up the Sun. I, however, have my Kilowattrel lead. Now, this was an incredible series of turns, and this was also an insane set. So, I'm going to go for the Stockpile. That's going to increase my defense and my special defense by 1 stage. Now, the thing about Stockpile is you can only use it at a maximum of 3 times. So I'm trying to get as many Stockpiles as I possibly can. The Torkoal is going to set up the Stealth Rocks, which is definitely a little unfortunate. I couldn't fit Hazard Removal on this team, so I kind of have to deal with the Stealth Rocks. Now, the Raging Bolt is going to come in. They're going to get a special attack boost from their Photosynthesis. I'm going to set up a second Stockpile. Now, this Raging Bolt may be dissuaded from going for an electric move because I could be carrying Volt Absorb. So I'm going to get my 3rd and final Stockpile, and I was hoping that I would be able to tank whatever hit this Raging Bolt goes for versus me. They're going to go for that Weather Ball. It's going to be doubled in base power, and it's also going to be a fire move. I take that thanks to my Stockpiles. I'm going to go for the Spin Up. This is normal gem Spin Up, and with the 3 Stockpiles, this is a 300 base power move, and I just one-shot the Raging Bolt. Oh my gosh, that was like the first time that Kilowattrel has probably ever KO'd Raging Bolt. So this moveset is all about going for Stockpiles and boosting the base power of Spit Up. Spit Up gets 100 base power for every Stockpile that's used. So at maximum Stockpiles, I get a 300 base power normal move, and it's also boosted by normal gem. And I even have Terra Normal if I really just want to nuke something. This is also the fastest Pokemon that gets access to Stockpile and Spit Up, which is why I wanted to use Kilowattrel with this amazing set. That KO on Raging Bolt was just absolutely amazing. So Cinderace comes in. They're going to outspeed me and go for the U-turn. It's not like I could do much. I would have to set up my Stockpile Spit Up strategy. But what an amazing series of turns getting rid of the threat that is Raging Bolt. So the Cinderace, though, was definitely a really big problem, as well as this Slitherwing. Now, assuming that it's in the Sun, I thought that this Slitherwing was more than likely going to be Choice Banded. It even gets an attack boost from its Photosynthesis. So I wanted to bait it into using like close combat or something. But they end up going for the Wild Charge, which obviously just absolutely takes out my Quaxclaval, unfortunately. But I thought, well, okay, if they're Choice Banded, then they might not be convinced into going for Wild Charge against my Belly Bolt. Of course, this isn't my Belly Bolt. So I have an Air Balloon on this thing. I'm actually Hisuian Zoroark with the Air Balloon. So I go for the Shadow Ball, but it actually tanks it. But they go for the close combat. So I was like, that's really great. I was actually immune. But I didn't like how much this Slitherwing tanked the Shadow Ball. I assumed they're Assault Vested, but I end up getting a critical hit, which definitely mattered versus the Slitherwing. So I thought Hisuian Zoroark was a great Pokemon for this team, considering that Ghost and Normal are pretty much unresisted except for Pokemon like Tyranitar and Kingambit, which is why I also have Terra Fighting on this, which turns Terra Blast into a fighting type move, and therefore I can hit those Pokemon for 4 times super effective damage. And Ghost and Fighting is also really good dual coverage as well. So the Sun is going to fade, but they're going to bring back in their Cinderace, which they definitely know that I'm a Hisuian Zoroark. Now the unfortunate thing is that I really couldn't switch anything into this Cinderace, so I kind of had to sacrifice my Smeargle this turn. I'm running a Focus Sash on this set, but because of the Stealth Rocks, I obviously am not going to find an opportunity to set up with that Smeargle. So I'm going to bring in my Belly Bolt. Now, this Belly Bolt is definitely one of the most important Pokemon on this team. I really needed a Pokemon that could tank hits and be generally bulky while also gaining some recovery and being offensive at the same time. So this Belly Bolt has Soak, which turns the opponent into a water type, and Parabolic Charge, which would be super effective on the water type opponents and also give me a lot of recovery. And with this Pokemon's ability in Electromorphosis, I can basically get a really powerful Parabolic Charge going and get off a bunch of recovery. So they're going to bring in the Torkoal. They're going to set up the Sun again. I almost said the Rain. But I thought, okay, well, I just went for the Parabolic Charge in case the Cinderace wanted to go for like a Pyro Ball versus me. And I am going to get off basically almost all of my recovery back. So they're now going to swap out the Torkoal again. And they're going to go into their Zarude. Now, this Pokemon is definitely very threatening. If it's like Bulk Up or if it's Swords Dance, I'm definitely threatened by this Pokemon. I also have a Shuka Berry on this set, so that I could tank ground moves better, because my team is pretty weak to ground, and even though Kilowattrel is immune, that Pokemon is not really threatening much with Stockpile and Spit Up. So the Zarude does go for the Swords Dance. I'm going to go for the Soak. That is also going to be able to neutralize his Pokemon's Stab as well, because if it turns into a water type, it's not going to get stabbed from like grass or dark moves. Now it's going to be leftover Zarude as well. And the unfortunate thing is that they're also going to end up terrestrializing their Zarude as well. And when the opponent terrestrializes, you can't go for Soak and change them into a water type. They actually are completely immune to that. So the Zarude is going to be Terra Poison. They're going to set up a second Swords Dance. So now they're +4. And I thought, shoot, this Pokemon is definitely getting very threatening. So I'm just going to continuously go for the Parabolic Charge. They definitely don't want to go for like an attacking move against me. Even though I'm running a more offensive Belly Bolt, I imagine that they probably just want to, like, make sure that they one-shot me. So I'm going to bring in the King Gambit, except that I'm not King Gambit, I'm Hisuian Zoroark. The thing about Air Balloon Hisuian Zoroark is that it works great with both Belly Bolt and King Gambit. It adds to that convincingness, I guess. That's not a word. Anyway, the Zarude ended up going for a +6 Swords Dance. I was like, holy smokes. So that's actually good, because I'm going to be able to get off some Shadow Ball chip against the Zarude. Does some pretty good damage. They actually end up going for the Solar Blade +6 in the Sun. This move is going to absolutely just annihilate me. But I thought this is fine because of the fact that I have my King Gambit. And of course, I had to include King Gambit on this team because King Gambit is just really, really good. Although I will say it's only half as good, but it only has half of its moveset. Now, the Zarude is going to get more leftovers recovery, and I thought, well, I have 4 fallen Pokemon, and I have Supreme Overlord on this King Gambit, so right now my moves are boosted by 40%, and I'm also running Terra Dark on this King Gambit as well. So, going for the Terra, I have Sucker Punch on this, of course, and I was really hoping that this Terra Dark Sucker Punch would be enough to take out this threatening Zarude. Now, the other move I have on this is Kowtow Cleave. I have Terra Dark with the Dread Plate to really further boost my Dark-type moves, because really, this Pokemon could just spam Dark-type moves, and it's really all it needs. This Pokemon is absolutely crazy. I should also note that I'm running a more HP-invested King Gambit, and normally I run Speed on King Gambit, but I decided not to run any Speed because I wanted to have as much HP and bulk as possible. So going for the Terra Dark Sucker Punch against the Zarude, and they thankfully do go for an attack. I was really worried about them having like Jungle Healing or Synthesis, especially in the Sun, but the Sucker Punch is going to be able to take out the Zarude. Now, here's the current game state. They have a Corviknight left. They have the Sun Torkoal and Cinderace. Now, I'm not running any speed on my King Gambit, as I mentioned, and I figured that if this was like an Iron Defense Body Press Corviknight with Rocky Helmet, my King Gambit was never beating this thing 1v1, because Corviknight is always going to outspeed me, and they're constantly going to whittle me down with Body Press, and also Roost. They could always like Roost recover and like whittle me down with the Rocky Helmet chip. So they're going to swap out their Corviknight, and I have the Electromorphosis boosted Parabolic Charge, which does a lot of damage to the Torkoal. I'm going to be able to 2-hit KO it, and that's the end of their Sun Pokemon. But they have the problem in the Cinderace, which I imagine might be Choice Banded, or like a more offensive Cinderace as well. So This was a pretty scary series of turns. They go for the Power Bolt. I lived on 2 HP. I was like, oh my goodness, Belly Bolt's bolt is amazing. And I go for the Parabolic Charge. Unfortunately, even with the Electromorphosis boost, it doesn't take out the Cinderace. Now, I needed my Belly Bolt for the Corviknight, which is why I switched in my King Gambit, because I figured that I should also be able to tank I should be able to tank a Pyro Ball in the sun and then threaten to KO it with the Sucker Punch, which I am able to, but unfortunately I get burned. Now, like I mentioned, this Pokemon, even though it has a really strong Kowtow Cleave with Supreme Overlord, it was never, it was only doing like over half to Corviknight, which is a lot of damage. But if they had a Iron Defense Body Press, or if they were like Rocky Helmet Corviknight, then they were always going to beat me 1v1. They could always just like roost stall me, and like Body Press was doing a lot of damage to me anyway. And I don't know if this Corviknight ended up being Rocky Helmet or if it was like leftovers or something. But as I switch into my Belly Bolt, I'm also going to take Stealth Rock's chip damage. They're going to go for the U-turn. I'm able to tank that, but the thing is, I'm not going to be able to get a bunch of Parabolic Charge recovery on the Cinderace coming in, because the Cinderace is also on a low amount of health. So I am going to take it out, which is nice, but I don't get a lot of recovery. I'm only on 23 HP, and the U-turn from the Corviknight actually did 30 HP in damage. So maybe in hindsight, I should have saved my King Gambit and like went for the Terra Dark Kowtow Cleave anyway, like try to go for like a critical hit versus this thing. But I hope that makes sense as to why I made the plays that I did, because I really needed my Belly Bolt for the Corviknight, but I also like needed to preserve my King Gambit. I don't know. It's really difficult for me to know exactly how I could have played that game like any differently from the position that I was in. Now that's going to lead into game number 2. I'm really adamant on wanting to get at least a win with this team, because it would be pretty incredible if I did, because I'm only using like 2 moves. So anyway, if you're enjoying this video, please consider hitting the like button and also hyping the video, which I think you can only do on mobile. But in any case, let's get right into the second game. So my opponent is going to lead off with the Haxorus this time. Definitely a very threatening Pokemon off lead. So I always opted to lead off with Kilowattrel, because I always wanted to get off the stockpile spit up set. So I go for the stockpile here, and I was like, well, the only way this Haxorus would be able to outright KO me would be if they're, I don't know, if they're like Choice Banded Outrage. And yeah, they're Choice Banded Outrage, which is unfortunate because I don't have a Fairy type on this team, so, and I don't want my King Gambit taking damage either. So I'm gonna go into my Smeargle here. This Smeargle, by the way, this set. So I'm obviously going to be able to tank that because I have a Focus Sash on this set. And I'm going to go for the Shell Smash on this. That's going to double my attack, my special attack, and my speed. Now, with only 2 moves, you're probably wondering, what move could you possibly have chosen? Because Smeargle gets every move. What move could I have chosen? Well, I'm a pretty evil woman, and I decided to go with Dire Claw. So Dire Claw is the signature move of Sneasler. And basically, that move has a 50% chance on paralyzing, poisoning, or sleeping the opponent. It's an incredibly cheap move, and that is exactly why I wanted to run it. And I also didn't really want to run Sneasler on this team either. I thought it would be way funnier if I used my Pookie, that is Smeargle. So going for the Dire Claw, the +2 Dire Claw, it does like nothing to the Haxorus, but I do get off a poison. I was really hoping that I would get off the sleep and then hopefully like be able to go for another Shell Smash and maybe like take out the Haxorus. But they do get off the 3-turn Outrage, which is going to take out my Smeargle, but they're confused now. So I thought, well, should I bring in my King Gambit here and threaten this thing with a Sucker Punch? I kind of want to do that actually. So I'm going to go into my King Gambit. I'm not sure if they're going to stay in, but they're going to switch out. Of course, if they're Choice Banded, they don't want to risk hitting themselves in confusion. So I'm going to go for the Kowtow Cleave. In comes the Mudsdale. Mudsdale takes over half, but they do get the stamina boost in defense. So I'm going to go for another Kowtow Cleave, hoping for the roll to KO it. But unfortunately, the Mudsdale just takes the hit, and then they go for rest. That's better, honestly, than them going for Body Press, which would have definitely taken out my King Gambit. But this Mudsdale is going to end up being Chesto Berry. So they're basically at full HP. And they're also at +2 defense. I was thinking after the damage that this might be more of, it might be more of a especially defensive Mudsdale. So they're going to go for the higher horsepower. I'm going to bring in my Hisuian Zoroark with the air balloon, and I'm going to go for the Terra Blast. Just do as much damage as possible to the Mudsdale. That does great damage. Hisuian Zoroark has some great offenses. So unfortunately, they go for the Stone Edge. That crits me, and I lived on 1 HP. Oh my god. So I was hoping that they would just be like Body Press and a ground move, because otherwise my Hisuian Zoroark completely walled this. But as I go for another Terra Blast, the Mudsdale is going to be able to tank that hit, and they're going to go for the Heavy Slam, interestingly, and take out my Hisuian Zoroark. So I was like, okay, well, they don't even have Body Press at all. So I'm going to bring in my King Gambit. I opted not to go into my Quaxclaw because they're +4 in defense, and if they were like a defensive Terra, like Terra Water or like Terra Dragon, then they would have been able to tank the hit and gone for the rest, and I would have lost the game. So they're going to bring in the Arboliva. This Pokemon is very, very bulky and threatening, and they have Strength Sap, which is definitely going to be able to 1v1 my King Gambit, especially since I don't have Swords Dance. So I'm going to go for the Soak and turn the Arboliva into a Water type. They actually end up revealing Miracle on their set, so I was like, oh my gosh, what do I even do versus this thing? So they're actually going to end up swapping out. They don't want to get hit by the super effective Parabolic Charge, so I opted to go for the Soak again, anticipating that they might want to go for another Miracle, but I get the Vikavolt on the switch in, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do a lot of damage with my super effective Parabolic Charge. It just misses out on the KO versus this thing, unfortunately, and they eat a Citrus Berry, so I was like, okay, well, if they hit me, then the next Parabolic Charge should be enough to take out the Vikavolt. Bug Buzz does not a lot of damage to me because Belly Bolt is just that frog. It's so bulky. And the Parabolic Charge is going to be easily enough to whittle this Vikavolt and take it out. So I was like, okay, well, I denied Sticky Webs. Not that that really matters because I have heavy duty boots on my Quaxclaw, and my King Gambit isn't really speedy anyway. But it's always nice to get rid of that Vikavolt. It could be threatening to my Quaxclaw. So going for the Soak on this Arboliva, on what I'm anticipating to be, of course, the Miracle. They end up going for the Leech Seed, however, and this Pokemon is going to be very, very, very tanky and annoying to deal with. So, of course, as with any Pokemon that is Soaked, they're going to opt to Terrasilize. That means I can't Soak them anymore, and they're going to be Terra Normal, which is interesting. So, they're not like, I was really worried about this thing being like Terra Ground or something, but they're going to be Terra Normal. And I'm going to go for the Parabolic Charge. That's going to be neutral on this thing. Still does a decent chunk of damage. And as I get off my recovery, I thought, well, even if they do go for the Miracle now, I might be able to tank the Miracle because I have a bunch of HP on this Pokemon. So they do go for the Miracle. They're also Seed Sour on the set as well. And that's going to summon the Grassy Terrain. And this Pokemon has Leech Seed recovery, Grassy Terrain recovery, and it's very, very bulky. And my King Gambit is not really going to be, it's going to do a lot, but they can always Strength Sap my their HP all the way back and drop my attack. So Parabolic Charge does a lot of damage, actually, and I get some great recovery. They also have Giga Drain on their set, too, for further recovery. Now, at this point in the game, I thought, okay, if I get this Arboliva at a low amount of health, like a super low amount of health, I could Revenge KO this Arboliva with my Quaxclaw. It's a good thing they went for Giga Drain as well, because that activates my Electromorphosis, and that means that my Parabolic Charge is going to do a lot of damage. So going for that Parabolic Charge, it's on red HP. It gets so close to taking it out. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Or rather, maybe fortunately it doesn't, because as they go for the Miracle, that is definitely going to take out my Belly Bolt. But they are on a very low amount of HP, like I mentioned, and that is just free reign to go into my Quaxclaw here and go for the Aqua Step. They stay in, and that gets taken out. I'm going to get a speed boost, and of course I'm running Moxie on this set, and when Quaxclaw gets the ball rolling, it is such a threat. So yeah, this Pokemon is definitely in position to sweep potentially. So they're going to bring in their the Galarian Slowbro. Now I know this Pokemon can get Quick Draw, Quick Claw nonsense, and I don't want to risk that happening and them going for a Psychic move. So I'm going to end up Terrasilizing into the normal type. This is definitely one of the best Pokemon on my team because I'm making use of the move Last Resort on this set. Now, Last Resort is a move that only works if you use every other move on your moveset. So by only using Aqua Step, I could then have access to Last Resort, and that move does so much damage, and boosted by Terra Normal, it's just an absolute nuke, especially after I get a Moxie boost. I absolutely had to include a Pokemon with Last Resort on this team. It just felt like the best possible move to use when I'm only using like 2 moves. The Galarian Slowbro doesn't get any quick draw shenanigans, and that is going to take it out with the Terra Normal Last Resort. I get another Moxie boost, so now I'm at +2 attack. Palmot comes in. I was worried about this Pokemon being Focus Sash or having like Mach Punch. They don't go for the Mach Punch, and as I hit it with a bunch of stars, they don't end up being Focus Sash either. Palmot gets taken out in 1 hit. I get another Moxie boost. The last Pokemon is the Poisoned Haxorus, which I am going to outspeed because of my speed boost from Aqua Step. And the Terra Normal Last Resort at +3 attack is easily going to be enough to take out the Haxorus. That is the end of both games. Oh my goodness, this Quaxly Ball was just such a beauty. I love it. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this 2 moves team. My name is SkyLaaa. Don't forget to smile, and I will see you all next time.